Good afternoon, welcome back to Channel M's Lunchtime News. The breaking news this hour, Greater Manchester has voted against plans to bring in a congestion charge. We can look at those results in a little bit more detail for you now, and this map clearly shows all 10 boroughs across Greater Manchester have voted no, rejecting the plans. The whole map red, not one vote has backed the plans. Let's go back to where that announcement was made at Manchester Central now. Andy Crane's on standby with some instant reaction to this result.
Thank you, James. Back here at Manchester Central, people are digesting the results. I don't know whether it's unfair to say a shock result. All 10 of the boroughs have voted no. The leader of Stockport Council is with me, Dave Goddard. Now, we were fairly sure that your lot were going to vote no, but 10 out of 10, you must be thrilled.
Well, I think it just sends a message clear right across the conurbation now. We need this investment. We need it funding properly by the government. No more stealth tax, no more hostage to fortune. Just give us the money and let's have a world-class city region.
But I was speaking to Paul Horrocks from the Evening News moments ago, and there is no plan B, Dave. How do we get, we all agree we need the investment. How are you going to get the investment out of the Department of Transport if it's not going to be through this method?
Well, over 1 million people have sent a message to government that the way to get the investment in the public transport system is not via a congestion charge. I think congestion charge in this country is now dead. So they have to start again, they have to think again, and I think there was 1.5 billion on offer, and the rest was through the congestion charge. That money's still on the table, and I want that money to come to Greater Manchester.
Do you not think it was a selfish vote, essentially? People are voting not for the greater good, not for the benefits of the community, not for the long-term future of Greater Manchester. They were voting because, frankly, they didn't want to pay. And that's not really the way forward, is it, for a city? We have to look to the future, don't we?
Well, you asked the people who voted, over 100,000 people in Stockport, 100,000 people in Manchester. I mean, they had the most to gain in Manchester. They had the improvements. Not a lot of people in Manchester would have paid the congestion charge. But I think it's that fundamental feeling of injustice that somehow you have to pay extra for something that anybody else can get on merit. And I just think that the government now has got to really sit down with AGMA and the 10 leaders and have a look at, and there is a plan B. There will be a plan B device because this city deserves it. And when that's delivered, I think that people will look back on this and say we did the right thing. But it's a great moment in history, this, for Stockport.
Will you be able to heal the wounds that have developed between yourself and perhaps the local authorities who were in favour? You still have to work together, don't you? AGMA still has to be 10 boroughs working in harmony, and there have been some fairly massive rifts formed over this over the last few months.
There are, but I mean, we're all adults and we go back there. We've got an MAA agreement, we've got 7 boards going on. We work together 99% of the time at AGMA. Congestion charge, we all went our own different ways. But one thing's for sure, if it's about credibility, the people who are on the right side of this were the opponents. Me, Susan Williams and Bob Bibby, we stood there on our own against the 7 who told us everybody were going to support it. And the evidence today is that they weren't.
I'll let you go away and work on Plan B. Dave Goddard for now. Thanks very much indeed. Back to you, James.
Well, we'll be back with Andy and the rest of the team at Manchester Central later in the programme. In the meantime, we want your thoughts on this no result. What do you make of it? Is it the right decision? Send me a text to 88821. Start your messages with the word news. We'll try to get to some of them before the end of the programme. That number again, 88821. You can also email newsdesk@channelm.co.uk. Well, let's get a little bit more reaction to this no vote now, which means that all sorts of areas that could have seen improvements with the Transport Innovation Fund bid will now have to carry on as they are. We've chosen one area that was to benefit and been to see how bad things are there for commuters. David Henry's been speaking to people in Ashton-under-Lyne.
Here in Ashton, like everywhere across Greater Manchester, opinion has been divided over the transport plans. The town stood to gain from improvements to its public transport system, but the congestion charge was clearly too much of a concern. The town is right next to what would have been the outer charging ring.
So the no vote means Ashton's drivers will not have to pay to cross the M60, but it does mean that the promised improvements to rail and bus services will not be coming either. And the latest plans to bring the tram system to Ashton town centre have once again been derailed.
At Ashton train station, it's another busy morning.
The service is okay, but the trains are ridiculous for rush hour.
Why'd you say that?
Sometimes we don't get on them. Too full.
They're always putting on the shorter trains rather than the longer ones. Well, I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I start at 8 o'clock. Train normally comes in at 7:34. It's now 2 minutes past 8 and it's still not here.
The long-suffering commuters here would have benefited if the yes vote had won. But still, some were never convinced by the plans.
I voted no for the congestion charge.
Why was that? Well, I don't think that it's fair for the motorists once again. It's just, to me, it's like another tax on them. I mean, they're already paying enough for the fuel and the petrol, and I don't think people should have to pay to go into Manchester.
There is some hope for Ashton's commuters. The government has promised to increase carriages on trains coming into this station, but the result is a victory for the town's drivers.
I don't feel people should be charged going into Manchester.
All it is an extra tax, and I think we pay enough tax everywhere.
I mean, any kind of charge is going to affect people that are just coming into a town to shop. You know, it's bad enough with car parks, never mind another charge on top.
We're going in and out of Manchester, our business depends on it, so it's going to cost us money to go backwards and forwards, so it's definitely no.
Rob Hardman has campaigned against the congestion charge for over a year.
We're very pleased with the results, and we believe it's a reflection of the opinion we've been experiencing when we've been campaigning. Now we need to look at what needs to be done to genuinely help people in Tameside get decent public transport and solve congestion problems without having to have the loan and without having to have a congestion charge. I think people have seen the plans for what they are and realised that it's flawed and there's little benefit in Tameside.
If the Yes campaign couldn't win the argument in a place like Ashton, it was clear they were always going to struggle. Voters here decided the congestion charge was too high a price to pay for better public transport. David Henry, Channel M News.
Well, Ashton under Lyne is, of course, just one area, but this no vote has an impact for the whole of Greater Manchester. With more details on what it means, here's Andy Buckley.
Vote means Greater Manchester's missed out on £2.75 billion worth of investment across the public transport network. If your journey into work in the morning is difficult, then there's little prospect of it getting better. Campaigners who pushed for this no vote said it had cost £1,200 a year, so you will avoid paying that. But at what other cost? It's not just the congestion charge which has been thrown out, it's also a massive programme of investment. There would have been more buses, especially at the busiest times of day. It's not yet clear what commitment bus companies will be able to make to providing those. Extra carriages had been planned to ease cramped conditions on train services, and many stations would also have been upgraded. On the tram, some work's still going ahead. This was planned anyway as part of the so-called Little Bang expansion, and work's already underway. This will see the network almost double in size, with new lines to Chorlton, Droylsden, Oldham and Rochdale. But Oldham and Rochdale would have got even better links right into their town centres had today's vote gone the other way. There were also further extensions planned to East Didsbury, Manchester Airport, Trafford Park and the Trafford Centre, Ashton under Lyne and across Manchester city centre. Possibly the most controversial part of the plan was how all these changes would have been paid for. There would have been a grant of £1.5 billion from the government. The rest was a loan, paid back with cash raised by a congestion charge over 30 years. But the pay-as-you-drive plan wasn't what the public of Greater Manchester wanted. And other cities like Cambridge, Bristol and Leeds, which had been considering the scheme, may now revise their plans.
Welcome back to Manchester Central, where just a few moments ago the returning officer, Sir Neil McIntosh, declared the results of the Greater Manchester Congestion Charge TIF bid referendum. Call it what you will, it was a resounding no. Every one of the 10 Greater Manchester authorities has voted no, and by some considerable margin. With me now is a man who's been campaigning against the congestion charge from the very outset, the Blackley MP, Graham Stringer. Delighted with the result, I would imagine.
Yes, obviously I'm pleased with the result. I'm sorry we've had to go through this process because it was self-evident, and the people of Greater Manchester have seen that they've seen that the scheme itself was no good and the tax was appalling. It's just a shame that we've had to spend so much time and so much money all agreeing that that is the case.
But if we hadn't done, it would have gone through on the nod with the local authority leaders, wouldn't it? So it was probably better that we did it and that the people had their say.
In those terms, you're absolutely right. It's better that we went to a referendum. It would have been better had we had a good scheme and not had a regressive tax and regulated the buses and had investment in the transport.
You're a man in Westminster. I've spoken to lots of local councillors here, but you're in Westminster, and there is lots of concern now as to where we get the desperately needed investment in Greater Manchester's public transport. If we've rejected this and the people have spoken, how do we persuade the Department of Transport to give us the money that we so desperately need?
One of the sad things about this process is that political parties have been divided, my party's been divided, the Lib Dems have been divided, private companies, the Chamber of Commerce have been divided, public sector has been divided from the private sector. When Manchester works at its best, it's when we all get together. Now, after this, The people have said what they think about this. We need to all get together and go and knock on the door of 10 Downing Street and say, 8 years ago you promised us an extension to the trams. We'll sort out the buses ourselves, we'll regulate those buses, but you give us the money for these trams.
And it's that straightforward, and it has to be from you or the other local MPs in Greater Manchester, or does it have to be from the local councils making bids?
It has to be everybody. When originally they cancelled the money for the trams, every time Tony Blair had somebody in Downing Street, whether it was Mick Hucknall from Simply Red, whether it was the president of the National Chamber of Commerce, whether it was trade union leaders, they were all saying, well, we're here for this, but what about the trams to Manchester? And that's how we got the first £500 million. That's why the trams will be built out to Droylsden and Oldham and Rochdale and South Manchester. And we have to do that again. I mean, this has been a diversion, very divisive. It's out of the way now. It's cost a lot of money, but it's absolutely clear what people in Greater Manchester think and want.
Do you think, then, the people of Greater Manchester will be as passionate campaigning for investment as they have been in campaigning against the congestion charge?
It's different. I mean, it needs much more organising, and it means that every time the Secretary of State for Transport, every time the Chancellor, every time the Prime Minister goes somewhere, they say, 8 years ago you promised us our trams, we haven't got them.
So, harangue your local MP, harangue the Department of Transport, and we might get some investment after all. Graham Stringer, thank you very much indeed. This is Channel M's specially extended lunchtime news from the TIF bid referendum result, and we've more after this break.
Good afternoon, welcome back to Channel M's lunchtime news on the day. Greater Manchester has rejected plans for a congestion charge. In the last couple of minutes, we've had a statement in from the council leader of Manchester City Council, Sir Richard Leese, saying the referendum has given a very clear outcome. I'm sure the economic downturn, which is hitting everyone hard, has had a part to play. He says investment in public transport in Manchester will remain a priority for the City Council, and our commitment to face up to the challenges going forward remains undiminished. Well, we'd like your views on this vote as well. You can send your texts into 88821, starting your message with the word news, that number again, 88821, or you can email newsdesk@channelm.co.uk. Just checking a couple of the messages that we've had in already. One here from Wayne: a congestion charge enables mobility for the poor who can't have a car, and car drivers, family and friends who don't drive, and car drivers who also use public transport. One from the other side as well. This one here saying, it's absolutely made my day, with a resounding no. I've been fighting along with members of the campaigners against this. Do keep your views coming in. 88821's the number. Start your message with the word news, or email newsdesk@channelm.co.uk. Let's recap the results from this referendum result for you now. And if we take a look at the map of Greater Manchester, you can clearly see that all 10 boroughs there in red have rejected plans for a congestion charge and the investment in public transport which goes with it. 10 voting no, none of them actually backing the plans. We can also take a look now at the breakdown of the results borough by borough. And here we have Bolton, 20,529 yes votes as opposed to 76,910 no votes. All the way down here, a large majority of no voters. Bury, 16,563 voting yes, no, 64,001. Manchester, 43,593 yes votes. Massive, 113,064 votes no. Oldham, 17,571 votes for yes, 68,884 for no. And Rochdale, similar numbers, 17,333, but the no votes, 61,686. Let's take a look at the other 5 boroughs for you now. Salford there, 14,603 yes votes. The number voting no, 79,326. In Stockport, 24,090 voting yes, 103,706 voting no. Tameside, 16,323 people backing a congestion charge, but 83,105 people voting against. In Trafford, 20,445 yes votes, 83,568 saying no. And in Wigan, 27,810 yes votes. The no votes, 78,565. Let's stay with this and take a little bit of time to analyse what this result means. With us is our expert in urban living from Manchester Metropolitan University, Steve Millington. Thank you very much. First of all, your reaction to this quite categoric no vote?
Yeah, I don't think it was unexpected somehow. It's interesting seeing the statement from Richard Leese about economic downturn. Well, you know, Edinburgh voted resoundingly no as well, so by about 75% to 25%. So maybe that's a factor, but I don't think so in this case.
What did you make of the no campaign, which I guess has ultimately been very successful?
Well, I mean, I suppose in that respect, you know, things like the credit crunch, they could capitalise on that. You know, people don't want to pay more taxes. You know, people seeing fuel duties go up and down, and the price of petrol go up and down quite steeply over the last year or so. So, you know, another cost in the current climate is, you know, not very desirable, I don't think.
They have said there's no plan B. What do you imagine happens now? Because the problems of congestion, they just don't go away, do they?
Well, that's the reality, you know. People need to reflect on this when they're stuck on the M60 driving home next week, or they're trying to cram onto a carriage on the way back to the suburbs of Manchester. You know, this is what we're left with. This is, you know, we need these extra carriages now. We need investment now. We need extension to Metrolink. It's interesting looking at the geography of that. You know, Tameside, for example, they would have directly benefited from a new Metrolink line, a brand new Metrolink line going into that area, and they've said no. But it'd be interesting to look at the breakdown of that, you know, look at specific areas, you know, whether those communities next to the planned routes, would they have voted yes or no? I mean, it's hard to say without that information to hand.
Do you think that the Yes campaign was at fault in any way? Could they have done more to hammer home exactly what benefits this would have brought for Greater Manchester?
Yeah, I mean, the whole way the debate was pitched, oh, this is about a charge, and more emphasis on the benefits. Like, you know, if people said, well, now you can go and visit your relatives in hospital more easily, or if you go for a night out in Manchester, you'll be able to get home without having to pay extortionate taxi prices. You know, emphasising the benefits more, I think, you know. It's interesting when I was looking at the figures. I mean, a lot of people, this is all about getting to work and back, but when you look at the breakdown of movement across the city, the conurbation as a whole, most people do it for the shopping, you know, and that's not kind of, you know, how do you go to IKEA and bring back a flat pack furniture and on the back of a bus? I mean, it's difficult. It's those sort of questions as well. I think, thinking about the geography, again, a lot of people coming into Manchester work outside Greater Manchester. The travel to work area of Greater Manchester is a 40-mile radius around the city. These people don't have a vote. It'd be interesting to know their opinions.
OK, Steve Millington, thank you very much for your thoughts this lunchtime. Let's go back now to Manchester Central, where I believe Andy Crane's standing by with more reaction to this result.
Thank you. Welcome back to Manchester Central. The result was announced about 12:15 by the returning officer, and it was a fairly resounding one. All 10 of our Greater Manchester boroughs have said no. With me is Pat Carney from Manchester City Council. Are you out of touch with the electorate of Greater Manchester, Councillor?
Well, as a Democrat and as a politician, you learn to accept the verdict of the public and you can't quibble about it. They've said very, very clearly today what they think about the proposals. And there's a feel-bad atmosphere out there with the public at the moment. You go out on anything, I think, at the moment, and I think you'll get quite a lot of clamour and negativity back on it.
Why? Because of the current economic crisis? Are you trying to blame that?
No, I think the credit crunch has actually, you know, created the mood music in terms of the public are saying our household incomes are squeezed, we can't afford to pay any more, no matter if this was desirable or not. To me, it's a very sad day. It's disappointing that we won't have the great public transport system that we wanted in Greater Manchester. The dream is broken in many ways. I think the kids that will grow up in Greater Manchester over the next 10, 20, 30 years will see the impact of this decision today. The public transport systems they've got in European cities, we're not going to have that in Greater Manchester.
So where did it go wrong? Did you not get your message out? Did people vote with their wallets? Why has it been so emphatically no? Even in Manchester, which, you know, people said possibly was yes, 113,000 people said no. Where did it go wrong, Councillor?
Right, well, there's always a perfect campaign about messages and all that sort of thing, and those campaigns never happen. We have to reflect. I really do think that the mood of the public out there at the moment is hostile to any increases in charges from government or from local government. We will reflect in future years. If we'd gone out a year or two ago when there was rising incomes, more confidence, more optimism about whether there would have been a more balanced result. It was always a difficult one. I mean, the first question people ask about transport proposals, what's in it for me? And if you're a car owner, then you do your calculation. So it's always very difficult on public transport. It always has been in this country.
Do you think then that people will live to regret this? Will they, in 5 or 10 years' time, snarled up in traffic in Greater Manchester, think, oh, what if?
I think a lot of people will reflect on it in that way, and I think the kids that grow up in Greater Manchester, young people now that will be going to work in a few years in Greater Manchester over the next 10, 20, 30 years, they will see this snarled up Greater Manchester, which will have an impact on our economy, and they think, you know, where is this all leading to? You know, car after car after car. And so, no blame today. We entirely accept the verdicts of the public. They couldn't have spoke more clearly, but I do think it reflects the mood that's out there at the moment.
Let's talk about the positions of the leaders of the local authorities, because if we hadn't had the referendum, and originally we weren't going to get one, Susan Williams was adamantly against, Dave Goddard was adamantly against. It would have gone through on the nod otherwise with 7 out of the 10, and you're so out of touch. Should these people be looking to their positions, do you think? Richard Leese, for example, should he be looking to his position today?
Well, I'm Secretary of the Labour Group in Manchester, so I speak for the Labour Group, and the position of Richard Leese in Manchester is completely solid. 100% behind him on the council, 100% behind him on the Labour Group. We have the largest number of Labour councillors in Greater Manchester, so 100%. It is very, very difficult for leaders to take public transport issues to the public in this country. That's why we've not had many, this is very, very rare to have these referendums. It's very, very difficult to compress quite complicated messages, lots of multi-messages into just one question. I am sad. I think the dream has been broken. I think the dream of having that great system for the kids and young people in Greater Manchester, we've lost. And there's no plan B at the moment, so we're all going to have to stand back, get some Christmas shopping done, and actually think then about the transport needs. Because the transport problems will not go away. You know, inadequate buses, too high bus fares, need more trams, the snarling up, none of that goes away.
Pat Carney, for now, thank you very much indeed. I'll leave you to go and wait and lick your wounds, and with that, we're back to James in the studio.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. Let's recap the breaking news this hour then. And Greater Manchester has categorically voted no to plans for a congestion charge. Let's recap those results and take a look at how they actually break down across Greater Manchester. And this map clearly shows every borough there turning red. All 10 have voted against these proposals. Not a single one has backed them. And when we actually take a look at some of the figures, you can see that clearly a vast majority of people voting no here. You can see there 20,000 in Bolton voting yes, 76,000 voting no. Oldham and Rochdale, 17,000 yes votes, 60-odd thousand people voting no. This wasn't a close vote at all. If we take a look at the other 5 boroughs here as well, Salford there, 14,000 yes votes, and then more than 4 times that number, 79,000 people voting no. Trafford and Wigan, 20-odd thousand yes votes, around about 80,000 people voting no as well. A categoric no vote in this referendum. And we've been getting lots of reaction to this in from you as well. You can send us your texts to 88821, starting your message with the word news, or by emailing newsdesk@channelm.co.uk. I'll just go through some of the messages that we've got here. Stephen Morris from Bury, this just shows how out of touch the councils are with the electorate, and getting a referendum was the only way to show this. Another one here from Adrian Lucas, who's he calls himself from the Republic of Mancunia. A result for common sense from the common people. Again, just shows how out of touch our political leaders are. There are so many grey areas for the proposals, and some just did not make sense. I wonder if there will be more votes in the future until we give the result the government wants. Let's take this one here. David from Duckinfield. This is a victory for common sense. Motorists are taxed enough already. And another one here, an anonymous one. The little bang should now be quickly completed, referring of course to the improvements that are already underway to some of the public transport, but many improvements now won't happen. Far more analysis and reaction to this coming up through the afternoon. We've got bulletins for you at 2, 3 and 4 o'clock, and then the whole story with Andy Crane this evening from 5. The very latest on that no vote to the congestion charge here in Greater Manchester. From me for now, have a good afternoon. Bye-bye for now.